This guy doesn't feel that. This guy wants to be able to watch as much of practice as he's possibly allowed to. Whereas I'm just like, please stop. Stop reporting about practice because it's causing pandemonium. Ashton Genty moment of silence for an injury that might cost him like 2 days. It's just too much. Too much. Joining us now, he, of course, covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. He is our friend Jonas Shaffer, and he's back with us once again here on GCR. Jonas, it's Glenn. What's going on, brother? How are you?
What's up, Glenn? How are you, man?
I'm all right, man. Let me go through a couple things with you, right? I'm going to start with this. What is still to be determined? What might still be at stake for the Ravens in terms of actually setting their roster after this final preseason game?
I guess one final look at the centers. We got pretty compelling testimony from Declan Doyle today about the various virtues of Javon Gwynn versus Ethan Posick. Obviously, no more Danny Pinter because he is in all likelihood out for the year. Getting a chance to hopefully get some of the guys that were missing at practice on Monday back for Wednesday's game, which would mean that they're going to play on Friday. Wednesday's practice, which means that they're going to play on Friday, which means that we're not going to have any uncertainty about whether a Bilal Kone, for instance, is viable as a just contributor to this roster in week one. And then just some of the edge of the roster type of decisions, like are they going to keep 5 or 6 defensive linemen? Are they going to keep 3 or 4 running backs? Are they going to keep 4 or 5 outside linebackers? And if they do keep 5 outside linebackers, is it Adisa Isaac? Is it Ethan Burke? So it's not really the kind of usual drama that we are accustomed to, but I think we kind of know that going into this camp that there weren't really that many jobs up for grabs, and a lot of the backup jobs have gone to, I think, people who we probably have pegged all along as the favorites to earn those jobs.
You mentioned Ethan Burke. I kind of want to lump him in, but I sort of want to separate him as well because those are the two guys that I think coming out of week 2, Burke and Joe Fagnano, that Ravens fans wanted to talk about, and some wanted to suggest, well, they got to keep Fagnano on the roster. I'm going to start there because to me that one's easy. I cannot fathom any world in which there is room to consider that, or that it's even like a fear the Ravens have that if they were to put him on, I don't think anybody's picking him up to put him on their active roster, but I don't think even that fear would be enough to make that decision. I just don't think there's any world where there's even room, with no disrespect to him, to have conversation about that. Am I nuts?
No, I don't think so. I think the one thing that gets overlooked in all this is we ignore the context of where these players come from and instead focus on what they have done in camp or what they have done in the preseason, which of course is the fancy shiny bauble that kind of distracts us from what really quote unquote matters around the rest of the NFL. And in Fagnano's case, he was a guy who obviously did great at UConn last year, 27, 28 touchdowns, 1 interception. But he's an older guy, right? I think 24, 25, played at UConn for a long while. And then when he went undrafted, he did not go especially quick off that undrafted heap. He was signed basically one day before the Ravens brought in Diego Pavia. Like, it was the Diego Pavia news that kind of overshadowed the Fagnano signing. And I if you believe the spot track numbers, I think the Ravens didn't give Fagnano any guaranteed money, maybe a couple $1,000s, which I think is some indication of just how much they feel about him and also what his market was out there. So it's possible that the 50 to 80 reps that he puts on tape is enough to change the opinion of 31 other front offices across the NFL, but probably not. And so it's a situation where I think if you're the Ravens and you believe in this guy, you probably don't have to sweat it too much. The odds of you being able to keep a guy on your practice squad, but who knows? Maybe he has done enough, against the Eagles and now the Vikings, two talented, well-coached defenses to really change some minds around the league.
Yeah, that's possible. But I think if that's the case, then that's the case, and that's a bummer. But you'll try to find a third quarterback somewhere else. That's just my gut about that scenario. Jonas, the other name you brought up, it's interesting because I felt a lot the same way about it, but just the way that you posed it maybe makes me have to think about it more. My gut is, I like what I see in Ethan Burke too, but it just doesn't seem to me like there really is a spot for him, and that we might be overvaluing these preseason games. Maybe is there a deeper conversation about what the low end of that room looks like, and why there might be more competition and consideration for Ethan Burke on the roster?
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be one of the first useful litmus tests of the Jesse Minter influence on roster decisions and the versus the John Harbaugh influence on roster decisions as they compile the 53. Because I wish I had better detail for you. My NFL Pro All 22 stuff has been locking me out, so I can't get a sense for
What
who
is going?
exactly was lining
We
up
need to
where on the
fix
special teams.
this. Fix this immediately for Jonas Shaffer. Who do we need to get on about this?
I don't know. It's very labyrinthine and hard to figure out. But in that first game against the Eagles, it was Adisa Isaac on like 4 of the 5 quote unquote starting special teams units. And I don't think Ethan Burke got a single special team snap until the second half. And, it's not like the Ravens are opposed to lining rookies up on those teams. Matt Himner is getting reps with the first teams. I think Keandre Jackson probably, by the end of the preseason last year, it was pretty close to getting first team reps. So it just comes down to, I think, if you're Eric DeCosta and making these decisions with Jesse Minter, like you're weighing long term considerations, but you're also weighing short term considerations. And I think one of the short term considerations has to be, which of these guys helps us more on special teams and by how significant a degree. Like I know Ethan Burke had a couple good reps at Texas blocking kicks. I think he had 2 or 3 over his career, but he doesn't have, Adisa's just 40 times. Like he doesn't have that kind of downfield speed, and I don't know if that's going to be disqualifier for him in these kind of considerations. So I think obviously he outplayed him in the second game. I think Adisa probably outplayed him in the first game if we're just talking about defense. So it feels like it's a kind of neck and neck competition. If you don't mind too much, whatever Ethan Burke's limitations as a special teamer might be, but this could be one of those situations where the Ravens really like what they have and feel like they have unearthed a potential edge rusher gem from the undrafted ranks, which is about as unlikely as undrafting a undrafted quarterback gem from the undrafted ranks.
Jonas, I know you've had to do a lot of the reporting about the Rashad Bateman situation. I don't want to talk to you about too much of the details. I want to ask if the sense that I have on the totality of it is based on even the immediate follow-up and his partner recanting her story. Like, my gut tells me this is going to be something that, whatever may or may not have happened, it's going to be very difficult for there to be much of a different outcome here other than likely charges being maybe even dismissed or minimized. I don't know. I look at this as, if we separate the conversation about the alleged actions, which are very serious and very real, and I don't want that to be trivialized, and we only look at we're having a football conversation with a football reporter, my gut tells me that probably doesn't linger too much in the Ravens' thought process about what they're doing roster-wise right now.
I agree. I think even if there hadn't been this recent spate of news about the recanting and the whatever else was reported yesterday by TMZ, and that we have substantiated at the Banner.
Yeah.
Like the odds that Bateman was going to miss any significant time because of an NFL punishment this season, I think, were very, 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 very low. And that's just because the wheels of justice in the NFL take a while to get going. Like, I think it was 7 or 8 months from our investigation on Justin Tucker to them announcing the 10-game suspension. I think the turnaround time from the horrible situation with James Pierce in Atlanta was what, 7 or 8 months, 8 or 9 months for the NFL to announce that suspension. So if you apply that similar kind of time frame to a situation like this, which we probably shouldn't, because it seems like there probably won't be a whole lot of cooperation from the alleged victim in all this, then you probably have a situation where it's more likely that 2027 punishment is meted out as opposed to 2026. So if I'm a Ravens fan who's a big time Rashad Bateman fan, I guess obviously you're probably dealing with your own feelings about this, but you're probably not. You probably have to reckon with the realistic outcome in this, which is that he's not going to miss any time because of NFL punishment in 2026.
Yeah, and we keep saying two different conversations. That conversation also relevant, but just not relevant to what we're talking about in this moment. I say all of this. One of the things I've struggled with and that I keep coming back to, and I'm going to ask you kind of the same question about two different people, because I always like to say it this way, Jonas. It's a very internet thing. How do we talk to our kids about blank? I have really struggled with how to talk about Jacoby Lane. I've really struggled because you guys keep telling me about how great he's looked, and I believe you, and you see it, and the talent is real, but it's also August, and he was and I don't know what a reasonable expectation actually is for Jacoby Lane, who suddenly people are taking in their fantasy football drafts, and I just have no idea. How do I talk like an adult about the Jacoby Lane phenomenon?
Yeah, it's tough. I think at various points during this camp, when his star was really just on a rocket ship, we were kind of floating what would be the biggest line for over in terms of over under for receiving yards this year. I think one person floated 550, one person floated 450. So I think that probably gives you a baseline for that kind of level of production. And listen, like it's very rare that you find a guy taken outside the top 60 who produces more than 500 yards receiving in a rookie season. That's just how it is. And it's been interesting to do some reporting on him. I know Jeff Strubeck came out with a nice story today. I'm hoping ours comes out in the next couple of weeks. But like this is a guy who loves football. Loves football more than he loves school. That's for dang sure. He was thrown into the deep end there as the third receiver in some of these three receiver sets early in camp. Perhaps because Lamar really wanted a guy like that. Lamar's never really had a guy like that, and has obviously taken the bull by the horns. Like I think it's no coincidence that he was among the first guys to get the day off, basically, or the rest of the day off against Minnesota, whereas you saw Devontae Walker still continuing to get reps into that second half. So I think a lot of his production is going to come down to just what kind of offense are the Ravens actually going to run? Like, is it going to be 11 personnel heavy? Is it going to be 12 personnel heavy? Is it going to be 13? There are only so many opportunities for a guy like that if he's not on the field more than 50, 60% of the time. But I really like what I've seen. Even yesterday, we didn't get a whole lot of looks at ones versus ones in practice, but there was like a comeback route or a stop route or something that he was running, and he's going up against Nate Wiggins, who is not exactly anyone's ideal of a big, strong cornerback, but just the way that Jacoby was able to kind of throw his body into Nate, get the kind of separation that needed, and secure that catch for a 10 to 12 yard gain was just like, wow, there's not really a lot of guys in Lamar's tenure who he's been able to throw that kind of ball to. So I'm just excited as someone who's open to the idea of new things, reinvigorating Lamar, or giving him an added dimension of just what this guy who's big, tall, fast, and has great hands can do to lift up this offense in ways that we saw at times from DeAndre Hopkins last year, but just not consistently enough.
You heard it from Jonas. He said, take him in the 7th round of your fantasy draft. That's what. No, I don't think that's exactly the quote. And then the other guy is Tyler Loop, Jonas, who he went and turned around and made a kick this week or two in Minnesota. That's good. I have been so perplexed by the Ravens' handling of Tyler Loop. I don't know what I'm missing that has made them so bullish and has given them so much hubris about this young man. It's not, to me, about one kick. It's there just not being any evidence to me that he's a high-level NFL kicker, and the kickoff issues and not making long kicks and not even attempting long kicks in some situations. I'm stunned. I'm flabbergasted that this team did not prioritize a competition. I maybe he will prove to be as good as they think he is. It's just so confusing, the path to me that they've taken to be so bullish about someone who has accomplished so little in the NFL.
Yeah, just they believe in the guy, and for whatever reason didn't see fit to waste a roster spot on a guy who maybe they just realized didn't really have much of a chance of pushing Tyler Loop. Obviously, you see what was the Saints signing Daniel Carlson. Just a reminder of how quickly fortunes can turn. You think back to that Ravens Raiders game in prime time and season
Mm-hmm.
opener, what, like 2021, like, and Justin Tucker was at the peak of his powers. Daniel Carlson was a guy who seemed like of the next generation, just a
No
guy with
doubt.
a cannon for a leg who would never miss. And you spin it forward 5 years, and Justin Tucker's out of the league, and Daniel Carlson wasn't on the team until just a couple of days ago. So I guess if you are allowing for the possibility that you can have those downturns like that, then I guess you also have to make space for the possibility that Tyler Loop can all of a sudden become not just a solid NFL kicker, but perhaps a good one. And it's funny that we pivot from talking about Jacoby Lane, a guy who can do no wrong in camp in the preseason, to Tyler Loop, a guy who can do nothing right because he can go 10 for 10 in a practice or a span of a
It
couple
just doesn't
practices.
matter,
He can
right?
make it has in the preseason, and people still aren't going to forget what they saw in Week 18 last year. So it's going to be a long road back for him in terms of just getting equity with Ravens fans, but that's what you pay him big bucks for.
How long do you think the leash is? Like how much like do you think we're bullish about this until it ruins the season? Is it like a couple of misses and there could like what does your gut tell you about what this actually looks like?
It's a good question. I think it probably just comes down to at a certain point public pressure and also the markets they have available. Like I know it's kind of ridiculous to bring it up, but like you're bringing a kicker in not just to kick the ball on field goals and extra points, but also dynamic kickoffs. And that was a problem for him last year
Right.
that you didn't even mention. But it seems like, at least from the small sample size that we've seen in the preseason, he's done a pretty good job with. So I know obviously you can just have kickers blast the ball out of the end zone a lot of times, but that is another consideration for whoever the guy that you're bringing in. That's part of his job description. So it seems like if you're below 82% of the NFL, you're probably on life support there as a kicker. I know he didn't really ever get that low, but he also wasn't trying a whole bunch of long field goals last year, which kind of artificially inflated that percentage. So it really is a moving target. Like if they're losing games and they need a scalp and he's not doing his job, then that would seem like an easy target. But if they like what they see, or if the operation itself is just not up to muster, then that perhaps could earn him some grace as well from the folks who are making these kinds of decisions.
Jonas, what can I plug for you, sir?
Yeah, just coming up with some good stuff. We have a training camp survey. A bunch of folks who cover the team that went up today. I think we are hopeful to have an Adafe Owe feature going up tomorrow, with obviously the Commanders
Yeah.
coming to Owings Mills for the first time since he joined the Commanders, and just a bunch of the usual stuff. With the roster cut downs coming and the kind of slow, silent portion of the ramp up to the NFL schedule. A lot of good time for features. So be on the lookout for that. And just follow me on X at Jonas_Shaffer.
Always appreciate you, sir. Let's talk again real soon.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate
Thanks,
you
buddy.
having me.
Jonas Shaffer with us from the Baltimore Banner here on GCR.